Had them on long before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. Had them on long before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. I know the wall's closing in, but don't you dare give up now. Poe believed in me, pull up through some bucks down. Todd told the valet pull the truck round. Push the line after we drew it, it's just us now. Would you believe me if I told you my granny told me she prayed this? Then booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement. Right back where I started, nothing to show for a facelift. Got pushed playing Walter White and Davis, never felt so dangerous. The type of power they can't quantify. And name the best from my region, you gotta utter mine. Think of who really putting on, you never come to mind. Rapping like your Spotify, tap you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel the static, it's too close, find your balance. Embed the revolution for they prohibition bandwidth. Blood trickle from the leaders he was planning. Had them all line before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. Had them all line before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. Bought that flight to Amsterdam. When my accountant and minus my family found out too and didn't like it. You're not in this alone. What Dale said and I thought he was biased. Then I got a Venmo that said copy the finest. Before my foolishness settled in. Recorded a whole tape before we got to Berlin. This close to giving up but now never again. Don't overlook the work and come expecting to win. In the end, my word, never put nothing over the squad. Got it right up under their nose, gentrified the facade. Off the cliff with broken wings, I'm aware of the odds. Enough faith for us all, I'm the one for the job. Most days, catching sun rays, baby, look like the front page. Overthinking what they might say, have it your way. Yeah, the biggest threat is something they never seen. Dial it up, patch me into the screen. I had them all line before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. Had them all line before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up.
Greetings, everyone in Lukman Nation. What's up? Happy Friday. I am Jackie Lukman, and you are in Lukman Nation, the most dangerous show on social media, on the most dangerous network on social media, Black Power Media. What's up, everybody? Hope you have had a good week. Hope you have been well. Hope you have not caught this damn Omicron variant. That is just absolutely uncontrollable. I am working from home again, and as you notice, I'm in a different location in the Lukman Fortress. I am upstairs in the living room, a lot more light, a lot more warm in here. So I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, and you get to see a little bit more of the Lukman Fortress, other than the studio downstairs. So you know, it's nice to kind of hang out in different places. So look, really appreciate you hanging out with me this evening. It is winter. It's nice to finally have winter weather in actual winter. It's messed up that, you know, because of climate change, you know, it's hard to celebrate when weather is mild in December and January, because you know how frightening that is. So it's nice that it's cold. I'm glad that it's cold. But look, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Listen, if you have not subscribed to Black Power Media, you should subscribe to Black Power Media right now. If you you can support Black Power Media on Patreon, patreon.com/Black Power Media. You can also support Lukman Nation on Patreon, patreon.com/Lukman Nation. You can follow Black Power Media on YouTube and click the little bell to get notifications for when everyone on Black Power Media goes live. We appreciate your support. And okay, let's get to this, because I know that some people are probably not going to like what I'm going to say. And that's okay. I don't care. It's never stopped me from saying anything before. So it's certainly not going to stop me now. You know how every year when we get to Martin Luther King Jr. Day, supposed to be a federal holiday now, every year people do this thing where they have turned Martin Luther King Day from a holiday where we can just relax, take care of ourselves, just chill, into a day of service. You notice that? How for us, finally being able to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Um, as a federal holiday and his work as a federal holiday and his importance um, to the history of the struggle for justice in this country. Of course, he's not the only one who should have a federal holiday, but I mean, I guess so many of our people have gone unsung in this struggle for justice. But certainly, if anybody should have had a federal holiday, it would have been Martin Luther King Jr. You would have thought. The way the white liberals in particular talk about how they love MLK. Um, but the struggle to get a national holiday for Martin Luther King Jr. was long, it was arduous, it was racist, as you know, you figured it was, as you figured it would be. Um, you know, and it was amazing to me how immediately, when his day was declared a federal holiday, then all of a sudden it wasn't just a holiday, it was a day of service. And folks literally went on these campaigns about how we shouldn't observe Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday as a day off, but a day on. And I looked at that for years. I saw that happening for years. And it never sat well with me, and I really couldn't figure out why, but I finally understood why. Because the whole idea behind observing Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a day on, as a day of service, as a day to volunteer, as a day to work in our communities. Number one, it's only directed at us. It's only directed at Black people who were pushing for this federal holiday for King in the first place. And second, it is absolutely another way that reactionary right wing folks and spineless neoliberals, liberal folks, those white moderates, and some of the Black moderates too, that King excoriated in his comments in his letter from the Birmingham jail. It was a way for them to take away and distract from, once again, King's radicalism, his actual work, which by the time he was assassinated, he was clearly anti imperialist. He was calling out the triple evils that plague this society and by extension plague the world: racism, militarism, and capitalism, greed, materialism. So folks have turned the recognition of a radical leader for human rights, not just civil rights, but human rights. It's bad enough that folks distilled, whitewashed King's message to nothing more than "I have a dream." The man said a whole lot more than "I have a dream." Just the fact that when he was assassinated, he was in the midst of organizing sanitation workers in Memphis, actually actively involved in organizing workers against exploitation. What's going on in this country right now? If anybody should be using King's words as a clarion call for justice, it ought to be every worker in the country, around the country, who is fighting to unionize, who are on strike, because that's what King was doing. And he was also against, at the time, the war in Vietnam, but he was on a larger scale an anti-imperialist, calling out U.S. militarism, saying clearly that the United States was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. And he was also, so if anybody should be using Martin Luther King Jr.'s words as a clarion call for their activism, it ought to be the anti-war movement, right? And Martin Luther King Jr. also called out materialism and capitalism, because that's what that is. And he was an advocate for not only a living wage, but for universal basic income. He was an advocate for reparations. He was an advocate for economic justice. So if anybody should be using Martin Luther King's words as a clarion call for their advocacy, it ought to be everybody who is advocating those things right now. But instead, what has happened, aside from folks watering down Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy to "I have a dream," he didn't have a dream. He had solutions to our problems. So because folks in this society do not want us to talk about Martin Luther King Jr.'s solutions to those problems, they've turned recognition of his contribution to the struggle for justice on those levels to, well, let's make it a day of service. You Negroes who wanted this holiday for him, y'all don't spend that time focusing on what he actually said and what he actually did and what was going on when he was assassinated. Y'all go out there and clean up the trash in your neighborhood. Y'all go out there and have a day of service where you go paint some street signs. Y'all go out there and volunteer. And that's what Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday has been turned into. It's been marketed as a way for this society, this white supremacist, militaristic, materialistic society that has never wanted to recognize the king, the radical king, and his radical words that came out of the Riverside speech, the speech at Riverside Church, that came out of the letter from a Birmingham jail. The radical king that came out of where do we go from here? The radical king that came out of the interview with what was the guy, Mike Wallace, on what was it, CBS News, I think, where he said that, look, I'm not crazy about riots, but you have to understand, white America, that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what has America not heard? It hasn't heard the economic despair, the racial discrimination from the Negroes in the ghettos. And how much longer do we have to deal with these summers of unrest? Well, that depends largely on the federal government, on politicians, and on white America. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. said to Mike Wallace in that interview. Google it, look it up. And I'm going to get to Googling stuff in a minute, but look it up. And watch the entire interview that Martin Luther King Jr. did with Mike Wallace, where he talks about a riot being the language of the unheard, and America not listening to the people who had no other recourse but to rise up against their oppression that America continues to ignore. This society, the politicians and the community leaders who are pushing this uh day on, not day off. Make MLK Day a day of service. Make MLK Day a day to volunteer. Those are the people who do not want us to take that day if we're not going to just, sit around and enjoy a day off that we deserve. How about that as radical? How about the fact that nobody ever says to folks who celebrate the 4th of July, nobody ever says to them, oh, don't let this be a day off. Let this be a day on where you can serve your fellow citizens and ensure that your fellow citizens are experiencing the freedom that was won in 1776. I mean, because they couldn't really say that because that's bullshit, right? But I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? How come nobody ever says to people who celebrate Columbus Day? How come nobody ever says to folks who are like, how about this not being a day off, but a day on, and go serve the remaining indigenous people that your savior Christopher Columbus couldn't kill, didn't kill off? How about that? Nobody ever says anything like that to them. How come nobody ever says to folks who enjoy their day off for President's Day? How come nobody ever says to those folks, instead of President's Day being a day off, it should be a day on where you go and you serve your community and make some kind of restitution to all of those descendants of the people that your favorite presidents owned or oppressed in some way? How come nobody ever says to those folks? Hell, we don't even say to people who celebrate Christmas and Easter and Mother's Day. That's right, Mother's Day. We don't even say to them, instead of it being a day off, let it be a day on so you can, I don't know, go show other people who are less fortunate than you the love of Christ that you claim to celebrate. How about going and bail some mothers out of jail on Mother's Day? I mean, fathers don't get a whole lot of love on Father's Day, but I mean, it's the same. We don't do this. This country has not done this thing with let this holiday be a day on and not a day off to any other federally recognized holiday in this country other than Martin Luther King Jr.'s day. Now, that's some racist garbage. When the only holiday in the calendar of holidays, federal holidays in this country, there is this enormous campaign behind it to make the folks who recognize or observe that day and who pushed for that day to be observed, we're the ones who told we have to work on that day. Ain't that some plantation shit? Come on now. That is some slave owning plantation white supremacist garbage right there. So I am absolutely opposed to this whole idea of making MLK Day a day of service, a day on and not a day off. Yes, it is. It's a day off, Bama. It's a day off. I ain't working. I don't understand why we can't have parades and some delicious snacks and then sit on our behinds and do not a damn thing if we want to. Because every other group of people that observes a federal holiday gets that. I just really thought it was wild that, I don't see this insistence that we get out there and work in the community surrounded by any other holiday except for maybe Arbor Day, perhaps, but that's not even a federal holiday. Nobody gets that off. It's a day off, but we shouldn't be working. And shout out to the chat. What's going on, everybody? I apologize for not recognizing you all when I started but I was pissed off. So you know, I was getting there, and I noticed that Leah let us know that she and her husband have tested positive for COVID. Y'all, Leah, I really hope that you all are okay. I hope that you guys, you all recover well and completely, and that you don't have any of those fucked up long COVID symptoms, problems. I hope you all are well, and anybody else out there who has been struck by this damn virus. And I hope you all will do well. Please stay safe, do what you have to do. Full disclosure, I am, like I said at the top of the show, I am working from home again because I'm immunocompromised. I have chronic kidney disease. I cannot afford to catch this virus because the virus attacks internal organs, and it will attack your kidneys, and I will probably be on dialysis sooner rather than later if I catch this virus. That's something that I don't want to um I don't want to take any risk like that. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to work from home. So this is why when you see me on the show on By Any Means Necessary every day, you see a split screen of Sean in the studio and me, because I'm at home, because I cannot afford to be out there and potentially catch this virus. And it's completely fucked up that this country has responded the way it has, not at all, to this pandemic. But it's even more fucked up that this administration, that everybody said, all these people said people had to vote for in order to get rid of the last guy because he didn't do shit in response to this virus. Now this administration is doing more not shit in response to this virus. And here we are going into year 3 and people are still having to quarantine because this, oh my God. But that's, I'm gonna get to that in a minute too. But thank you so much, Karina. What's up, girl? Thank you. Appreciate the putting 5 on it. I appreciate that so much. Ricky Ryan mentioned in the chat that she thinks this whole day of service for Martin Luther King Jr. Day started with, guess who? Barack and Michelle Obama. Now, I didn't research that far, to see when this started, but I bet you she's right, because y'all are really, really sharp, and I bet you're right. I bet Ricky is right. I do think I remember, Obama peddling this idea quite a bit. Whether it started with him, I don't know, but just the fact that a Black politician, the Black president of the United States, made it a point to get in on or start this campaign to tell Black folks that we had to work on the federal holiday that we pushed for, is that kind of representational excuse me garbage that we still see in so many Black politicians. I mean, just the fact that here you had Barack Obama, Barack pull your pants up Obama, Barack, y'all Morehouse graduates, be responsible and take care of your children, and nobody owes you anything. Telling this to graduates of Morehouse University. They had done everything right, sitting there in the graduating class. Mr. If I had a son, Trayvon Martin would look like Trayvon Martin, but then the only thing he did for folks in response to that, the only thing he did in response to racialized extrajudicial killings was to form a commission on 21st century policing that that didn't include not one law and not requirement that changed anything, and sick the cops on Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter protest. Oh, so it's not a surprise that this dude and his wife, who I will never forget, Abda said that here this black woman is in the most powerful position of advocacy for black women in this country. And what does she do? She doesn't talk about dealing with trauma for black women. She doesn't use her office to advocate for equal pay for black women. She doesn't use her position to advocate for equal justice for black women in the justice system. No, what does she do? She uses her position, her influence, her power to put fat kids on a diet. That's what she did. That's what she did. That's what Abda said she did. And we laughed at that thing for a minute. And she did. What did Michelle Obama do for black women? So it's not a surprise that this whole day of service thing probably came from Barack and Michelle Obama, because I mean there were just black faces of the empire. There were just black faces of white supremacy. They're just black faces of US militarism, and they were just black faces of capitalism. That's it. And honestly, way too many politicians that we have to, look at their face, black politicians, way too many of them are shamefully performative, just like the Obamas were. And I'm going to get to that. But first, I want to remind folks that today is the birthday of somebody that we should not forget, who was not performative, who was not somebody who was just faking the funk. Today is Sundiata Acoli's birthday. And this is an article from 2021, from last year. And I happened upon this right before I started the show. And I didn't know about this when it happened, when it was published. This is from NPR. And it's interesting that some black police groups actually are advocating for Sundiata to be released from prison. Scroll down here. I hope my highlights are still there. There you go. So there are 4 black law enforcement groups that want Sundiata Acoli released. And this is from, again, August of last year. The National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, the Black Police Experience, Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and the Grand Council of Guardians. I bet you did not know there were this many black police groups in this country. I did not. But they all want Sundiata Acoli to be released. In their brief to the court, they said that an elderly person and someone serving a life sentence has a low recidivism risk and wouldn't be a threat to public safety. They said that in previous hearings, the parole board ignored evidence suggesting that Acoli was unlikely to offend again if released, but instead took into account the view that he deserved to be punished further. That's what the parole board said. The law enforcement group said that the parole board is not tasked with meting out punishment. That role belongs solely to the sentencing judge. And they also cited racial bias that often contributes to unequal sentencing. And I gotta say, I mean, yeah, I guess that's okay, but I feel like that's not good enough for me. That's like, it's like, well, you should release him because he's old and he's not a threat to anyone. How about you should release him because this system is racist as the number one reason. The system is racist and he's a political prisoner, and his imprisonment was an act of white supremacist terrorism against Black people fighting for their freedom. But they're cops, so I guess they can't say that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a little bit performative to me. And of course, in response, cops in New Jersey, the white ones, but a whole lot of Black ones too, are still pushing for Acoli to basically die in prison. So I just wanted to make sure that today we lift up the name of Sundiata Acoli, who is absolutely a hero, and should not be in prison. I'm not even going to have the discussion about whether he was guilty or not, because when you are fighting against an unjust system for your freedom and liberation, the system is guilty. Your fight is righteous. So the facts of the case about whether someone who is a political prisoner is guilty or not, the only thing that political prisoners are guilty of is fighting for freedom against an unjust system. That's the beginning and the end for me. But so look, when we want to talk about Black folks being performative, I mean, it's easy to point at folks like this lady, and I'm going to try not to say, that terrible word it really is a terrible word, but sometimes I do. But I mean, sometimes some of us do deserve it. You want to talk about performative, and the way Black politicians are happy to fill that role of being, the mouthpiece for white supremacy, in dismissing and diminishing the oppression that we continue to experience. I mean, it's easy to point to folks like this chick, Virginia's first Black woman lieutenant governor, Winsome Spears, who says that we need to move on from slavery. This is Winsome Spears here with Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin. She's a Republican, he's a Republican. And Spears has the backing of folks down in Virginia like Bishop E.W. Jackson. If you don't know who he is, you need to look him up. And he's one of those performative Black folks in the pulpit who peddle this respectability politics, because you see, this whole framing of turning the MLK holiday into a mandatory day of service for Black people, it is an extension of respectability politics. We just can't enjoy a holiday. We have to always be working because that's a respectable thing to do. That's how we would honor King's legacy. No, it's not. No, that's not how we would honor King's legacy. That is just some respectability bullshit that is peddled to Black folks in a way, in a nice, acceptable way to tell us that we need to be working, and we don't deserve another day off. We don't deserve a day off. But you've got folks like Bishop E.W. Jackson, who I said, as I said, is the performative Black face in the pulpit. The Black face of white supremacy in the pulpit, himself a former GOP candidate for lieutenant governor, who said that the idea that the U.S. remains rooted in white supremacy is, that's just too far. He said that the people who traffic in that idea and who benefit from that, they hate Winsome Sears because she's the antithesis of that, and proves the thesis that America is a place of decency and fairness. I don't know how you can talk about a woman who ran on a campaign that was pro-Trump is decent in any way, but that's what happens when you get Black folks who are happy to be the white faces for white supremacy. They will happily co-sign any white supremacist debauchery as wholesome, and that's what this Bishop Jackson, E.W. Jackson guy does, and that's what Winsome Spears does. And she was able to win the lieutenant governor's election because, she's what she's supposed to be as a Black woman. She's deeply religious and she listens to worship music while she was on the campaign. And really what won the campaign for her was this. It was this tweet. It was this tweet where this picture right here was made into a campaign ad with this Black woman running on a pro-Trump ticket in Virginia, former capital of the Confederacy, that just took down the Robert E. Lee statue just a couple weeks ago. This is the picture that won her the election in for lieutenant governor in Virginia. She's a former Marine. So she did and said and presented herself in all of the ways that white supremacists like. And she was cool with that. So, but it's easy, right, to harp on folks like her because, she's an easy target. You know what I'm saying? And it's easy not to like her because who likes Trump, aside from the fact that a lot of people are like, well, she's a Republican. Well, that's not really the issue. The issue is that she peddles in the bootstrapism and the respectability politics that white supremacists and those white moderates that King talked about again in his letter from the Birmingham jail, she peddles in that ideology that they love to throw in our faces. That's the way we're supposed to respond to the injustice in this country. Not fight against it. No, not organize against it, but to use one person's individual accomplishments that were achieved at the expense of other people, but to use individual accomplishments as proof that America is progressing. Not that America is just, not that America is equal, but that America is progressing. If you have cancer, no, let me make it personal. I have chronic kidney disease. My chronic kidney disease can improve. My EGFR levels can progress upward a little bit, but I still have chronic kidney disease. So I'm still going to need either dialysis or a transplant at some point, even if my EGFR levels do go up a little bit. So this idea that, her election to lieutenant governor proves that America is progressing, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that a Black woman was once again able to pander to a bunch of racist white people and get them to vote for her so they could say, hey, look, I'm not racist. Everything I believe a Black person is saying. That's easy, right? It's that kind of performative kind of bullshit that's easy for us to point out. But what about if the performative bullshit comes from Democrats? What if the performative bullshit comes from people like y'all's girl?
And secure more at-home tests after the Delta surge in the fall. Why are we at a point now where folks still can't get tests?
But we just ordered, I don't have the number in front of me, but millions of tests. We have 20,000 sites where people can go, and I urge people to, you can Google it or go on to any search engine and find out where free testing and a free testing site is available.
But Vice President, the fact that we're still telling people to Google where you can get a test,
but come on now. Really, if you want to figure out how to get across town to some restaurant you heard is great, you usually do Google to figure out where it is. So that's simply about giving people right? A mechanism by which they can locate something that they need, something that can help them.
Y'all's vice president said when she was asked by an extremely exasperated, what's this dude's name? Craig Melvin. Did y'all not see the exasperation on Craig's face where he was just like, are you serious? Y'all's vice president said when Craig Melvin asked her, why did the administration not go out and get more tests in the fall after the Delta variant? That woman said, we just ordered some. That, first of all, that wasn't the question. The question was, why are there no tests now? And there is a reason why there are no tests now, aside from the fact that the Biden-Harris administration did not order tests and did not trigger the Defense Production Act, so to tell corporations to make them. None of those things that, remember when Biden criticized the Trump administration for not implementing the Defense Production Act for PPE, how come Biden didn't do it for the tests? And yes, Big Teal, that clip again, because we're talking about the performative nature of Black folks in political spaces. And they're supposed to be the ones that are telling us Black folks what to do. But here we are going into Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. We're supposed to be having this day of service, this day on and not day off. And this chick sitting up in the White House, not doing her job. Biden isn't doing his job, but she had the nerve to go on television and tell people to Google where to find tests that are supposed to be provided by the U.S. government, which was insulting enough. It was insulting enough that she didn't answer the question that was asked. But then she compared using Google to find tests that the government should have provided a long time ago and just sent them out to everybody's house. But then she compares people needing to find tests to using Google to go find a restaurant you want to eat at. Like me wanting a juicy ribeye and trying to find the best place to go get a juicy ribeye that I don't actually need to stay safe. I just want one. That is not the same thing at all as needing to find an at-home COVID test so I can go to work, so I can go to school. And you know what? Remember last week in Chicago when Lori Lightfoot, you want to talk about somebody else, another Black politician who's being performative? Lori Lightfoot throwing down the gauntlet and talking shit about the teachers in Chicago who were asking for tests, regular testing for students to go back to school. They weren't asking for anything unreasonable. Hell, the teachers weren't even asking for more money, and they should have. They were asking for the students to be tested, for students to prove that they have tested negative for COVID before they resume in-person classes. And Lori Lightfoot was like, no, hell no, fuck y'all. And here you have the Vice President of the United States, Miss, the head soror in charge, Miss Chucks and Pearls herself, comparing people needing to find an at-home COVID test so they can do what this administration is forcing people to do, which is go back to work and go back to school in the middle of a pandemic that is still out of control in this country, without having any support from the government hasn't even provided tests. But she compares the need for people to have at-home tests to wanting to find a restaurant that people want to. But this is black girl magic though. She black girl magic. She's the example of why this system is more equal. And the unfortunate thing, the really unfortunate thing is that, as usual, if you look at the video and you look at comments on the video, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to show them to you, but you have to just see them yourself. The racists are using her ineptitude as an argument against equity in hiring, which is what they're going to do. But it's like, we cannot use the reactionary response to people like Kamala Harris and black politicians like her and Lori Lightfoot that literally don't care if folks like you and me die as long as they continue to get their check. We cannot use the obvious, typical, it's coming racist response to those folks to not call out the absolutely performative, ridiculous, nothing but empty, the worst examples of identity politics that exist that these people really do represent. It's not that identity politics is bad. There's a legitimate framework for what identity politics really are, but folks like Kamala Harris, she does not represent that at all. Lori Lightfoot doesn't represent it like twice because, she is, of course, she's black, but, she's also LGBTQIA. So she, checks two boxes for some people, but she doesn't represent either one of those groups of people because she doesn't care if any of those folks die. And neither does Kamala Harris. And speaking of this COVID thing, it's interesting that this government, this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, is making a big deal about, oh, we just ordered millions of tests. And they don't tell you that the government is not going to just send the tests out to every household in the United States. You have to go to a website and sign up to receive the tests. A website that does not exist yet, by the way. And then there is a limit to how many tests each household can receive. I think it's like 4 tests. When the reason there are no tests to be found in many places in this country, in your Walgreens, in your CVS, in your grocery store, even online, the reason there are no place for many tests to be found. Oops, my TV, the mute just came back on. Sorry about that. Oh, well, you'll just hear weird stuff in the background. The reason they are nowhere to be found is because the corporations like Google, she told you to Google where to find the tests that are not on the shelves. You know why? Because Google gets tests sent to them for free, as many as they want. And for employees that work at Google and for Google employees who work at home. And yeah, Google, JP Morgan, MasterCard, all of the big companies, the airlines, they get tests as many as they want. They get first dibs on these tests. And you and I have to hope and pray that we can get to the grocery store or the CVS or the Walgreens in time when we find out that maybe they have some more tests. And then we get there, and of course there aren't any. And then this government is supposed to be providing tests, and they haven't even stood up a website yet for people to request it. It's ridiculous. And this woman is sitting on this interview, sucking her teeth. Oh, come on. Because that was her Black moment. She was trying to connect with the sisters with this teeth sucking thing. Literally comparing trying to find dinner with trying to find a test to see if we have been exposed to this fucking virus that this government has not responded to worth a damn. Just ridiculous. And the TV is kind of loud, so I have to hold on for a second. I'll be right back. I gotta go mute it now. See, that's what happens when your dog is on the couch and Brewski is over there. I don't care who you're talking to. I am going to watch my show. And so, but you know what? It's not just folks like Kamala Harris who are, the performative Black politicians, and Lori Lightfoot who are the performative Black politicians, especially in this COVID pandemic. You know who else? I want to point out to you is, excuse me, is the black face on a failed system. Remember this guy? Remember this dude? Yes, Jerome Adams, former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams, who I believe said at one time in a tweet on February 29th, what was that, 2000? When was this? Yeah, 2000, February 29th, 2000. Remember when this guy tweeted this thing? Oh, he took it down. Look at that. But that's okay. Business Insider was kind enough to keep the comment for posterity. Back in February 2020, former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams tweeted, "Seriously, people, stop buying masks. They are not effective in preventing general public from catching coronavirus. But if healthcare providers can't get them to care for sick patients, it puts them and our communities at risk." And this is a very good article from 2020 because it points out some contradictions in the emergence of the pandemic. They start the article talking to an epidemiologist from Tianjin, China, Elaine Shuafang, who said that when the pandemic began, when the outbreak started in Wuhan, everyone was wearing the face mask at that time. But then when she went back to the UK, she didn't see anybody wearing the face mask. She said, when the outbreak started in the UK, I found no one, or rarely someone, wearing a face mask. Sometimes when Asian people wear a face mask in the UK, they have some problems like being criticized or stigmatized. This was in 2020. And allegedly, the reason that Anthony Fauci and Jerome Adams and other folks gave for saying not to buy masks was that there was a shortage of N95 masks. That was the excuse that people gave for giving that ridiculous, and obviously we know now, deadly advice. But how about the fact that Anthony Fauci himself, in an email that was exposed by the nice people at Newsweek, said, oh, when was this? Let's see. When was this? This was on June 2nd, 2021, when there was an email that surfaced where Anthony Fauci wrote to someone, masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection. Not only has the Centers for Disease Control, under Jerome Adams and under, the current director, given mixed signals, fucked up advice, just flat out bullshit advice throughout this pandemic, but you have the top officials in the U.S. medical community. And I put medical in air quotes because we cannot assume that these institutions are not political. They absolutely are. Giving advice that makes no medical sense. And then on top of that, you have an administration in the Biden-Harris administration that does nothing to address the problem that the folks in the previous administration said that they had, which was the excuse that they used for giving shitty medical advice about masks, because Adams said that the reason they gave that advice was because there was a shortage of N95 masks, and people buying N95 masks put medical professionals at risk. Well, if that's the case, then again, why did the Biden and Harris administration not trigger the Defense Production Act to immediately start producing the N95 masks and the other PPE that not only the medical community, but we all needed, but they haven't done that. So what happens now? What's today? Today is January 14th, 2022. What does the CDC say today? An N95 mask is the best protection against the Omicron variant. So we've had so many Black faces in the previous administration. Remember the Black doctor who was the Trump spokesman for hydroquinone. Remember her? And she went on all of the conservative talk show circuits. So look, I'm not just picking on the liberal Black folks. No, there are Black people in both administrations, in the GOP and in the DNC, who are happy to be the spokespeople for capitalism and misinformation that causes us to lose our lives. There, as long as they get their check. And it's not just in the context of this pandemic, where we have Black folks who are really happy to be the face of the empire. We talked about Lori Lightfoot. And of course, she's not mayor anymore, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. And there are plenty of Black politicians around this country who fit this bill of the performative face of Black respectability politics. Always, they're supposed to be, their presence in the political system is supposed to be so inspirational for us, and we're supposed to aspire to them. But what do when they get in those positions? They start finger wagging, and especially working class and poor Black folks and our kids. And then they start using the system to treat us all like nails, because now they're the hammer. They're the hammer in blackface. That's all they are. And I can't think of anybody who embodies this better than wait for it, Marilyn Mosby. Now, I know that people outside of Baltimore have no idea why I'm sitting here hating on Marilyn Mosby. And trust me, this is not the reason I have a problem with Marilyn Mosby. Because, I mean, okay, so she lied on some loan applications. And this is actually pretty crappy when I think about it. You know, yeah. I mean, I'm never really going to be mad at anybody, you know, taking the system for a ride. If you can get yours, get it. I'm not mad. But Marilyn Mosby, this just adds to the reasons I can't stand the woman and why she is such a dangerous, dangerous representation of representational politics. Now, she was indicted. She was actually indicted yesterday, on perjuring herself to obtain money from a retirement fund and making false statements on loan applications to buy 2 vacation homes in Florida. She is the prosecutor for Baltimore. I don't know what the median income for Baltimore residents is, but most folks ain't making enough money to buy 2 vacation homes in Florida. She faces 2 counts of perjury for those requests, which were made through the CARES Act, because she claimed that the pandemic had caused her financial difficulties. Now, this is my problem. This is my problem with what she did. I wouldn't have honestly cared if she was like, yeah, I lied about getting some money, okay. But then she's going to lie about the pandemic causing her financial difficulties when, in fact, she made almost $250,000 a year. As a matter of fact, her income increased during the pandemic. The indictment also said that she received a raise of nearly $10,000 from the year before. She also didn't disclose on her mortgage application that she owed more than $45,000 in taxes to the IRS. I'm actually not mad about that. I mean, fuck the IRS. But then in 2002, the IRS placed a lien on the properties belonging to her. And the lien also applied to her husband, equally shady ass Nick Mosby, president of the Baltimore City Council. As I said, this is just really the tip of the iceberg. This is almost like, for me, the icing on the cake. The I hate Marilyn Mosby cake. Because the real reason and the enduring reason, and I'm going to drop this in the chat for you so you can read the whole thing yourself. The real reason that Marilyn Mosby is a pariah to me, excuse me, is because of her unending quest. This is an article. Sorry about the scrolling here, y'all. This is an article in Baltimore Magazine. Where is the title of this thing? Interesting. But this is an article about Marilyn Mosby's ongoing attempt to convict Keith Davis Jr. in Baltimore for a murder he did not commit. The many trials of Keith Davis Jr. There you go. So this was just published in Baltimore Magazine in 2021. This is a very detailed article, but I want to show you, this is a picture of Keith Davis Jr. when he was hospitalized immediately after his shooting by Baltimore cops. It gives lots and lots of details of the case, but this is one of the things I want to show you in this article. Keith Davis Jr. was tried and acquitted in January 2016 for armed robbery. He was tried in May 2017 for murder, resulted in a mistrial. tried in October 2018 for murder that was overturned, tried in October 2018 again for murder, ended in a mistrial, tried in February 2020 for murder, that was overturned, and he will be tried again in May of this year for murder. Who's behind all of these trials? Marilyn Mosby. Let me scroll down here because this article states that while elected officials in Baltimore all certainly know Keith Davis Jr.'s name, Mayor Brandon Scott, also Black, didn't respond to interview requests. And the city council have been deafeningly silent. A lot of that has to do with State Attorney Mosby's progressive prosecutor branding and the combination of power wielded by her and Council President Nick Mosby, her shady ass husband, who have a deep political base and high profile local and national supporters. They were under federal investigation back in November. Marilyn Mosby has now been indicted. Let's see, where else does about the attack to leaders of the Baltimore and Maryland chapters of the NAACP, the Reverend Jamal Bryant, clown ass pastor, and attorney Ben Crump, clown ass attorney, recently attended a press conference at Douglas Memorial Community Church in support of Marilyn Mosby in light of the FBI tax fraud investigation. The exception to the silence among the Black leadership in Baltimore is Councilman Ray Dorsey, who attended the third murder trial and stated flatly in a recent interview, Keith Davis is innocent, should not be incarcerated, and should not be tried again. End of story. Dorsey, like State Senator Carter, as the case is emblematic of police violence, the lack of prosecutorial oversight, and failure of our mass incarceration state. And let me drop this in the chat for you as well. Excuse me. And this is also a fabulous article published by our friends, Ricky Ryan, friends and comrades, Ricky Ryan, Salafu Mack, and Onyesanwu Chatoya in Hood Communist. This article is by Ricky Ryan, dated February 2021. Keith Davis Jr. and the Convenience of Criminality. Davis was assumed to be a thief. He was assumed to have robbed a cab driver, a hack. But it was a case of mistaken identity. These are some details of the case. Keith Davis Jr. was shot in the face. And he was on the phone with his partner, who is now his wife, Kelly Davis, when he was being shot. He didn't die. And for the next 5 years, he would be persecuted by Marilyn Mosby for surviving. Scroll down here in the article. Ricky Ryan says the case of Keith Davis Jr. illuminates the politics that surrounds a Black and democratically led city like Baltimore. Recently, headlines erupted over the sentencing of former Mayor Catherine Pugh, whose pay-for-play scheme through the sale of her Healthy Holly books directly confronts the validity of our faces in these spaces. There's a delusion that exists around how Black politicians, Black cops, and most recently, Black prosecutors are seen as a solvent to systemic racial injustice. But as Baltimore City has shown, that is nothing more than nice imagery. Imagery over substance is most notable when Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, and there she is looking all serious and shit. While many champion Mosby for her brave efforts in seeking justice for Freddie Gray, the truth is, Mosby used the indictments. Listen to this now. Mosby used the indictments as a way to silence a city in mourning and to tame the uprising that had taken place after Gray's death that was met with extreme militarized police forces. The city was in shambles, and Mosby's role was to calmly put the Black community back in line with the justice system. Despite never getting any police accountability for the murder of Gray, Mosby's unapologetic prosecution of the officers in Gray's case placed her name in the recently emerging rhetoric of the progressive prosecutor. The illusion of progressive prosecutor is torn apart by Mosby and her state's attorney's office relentless pursuit of Davis Jr. Mosby's 5-year refusal to drop the charges against Davis Jr. ignores that one of the cops who shot Davis Jr. in that garage, Catherine Philippou, has been under investigation by the FBI alongside the Gun Trace Task Force. There's no accountability for Marilyn Mosby because people are still all enamored with, oh, she tried to prosecute the cops in the Freddie Gray case. No, she actually did not. That was all performative. It was really meant to calm the masses on the reservation down and to put their trust and hope in a justice system that has never, ever given us justice. That was her job, and she knew that was her job, and she went right along with it, flying under the radar on local and national television using Black girl magic, weaponizing representation and social justice jargon, going after Keith Davis Jr. for 5 years, now coming up on 6 with the new trial, making promises to communities and families like the family of Tyrone West, you have to look that case up, that she's been unable to keep. So Keith Davis Jr., and I think it is in this article, also is only the second person in the history of this country who will have been tried repeatedly for the same crime. Marilyn Mosby is responsible for that. And there is no evidence. There is no evidence, and that's the link to the article for you in Hood Communist. There is absolutely no evidence that points to Keith Davis Jr. being guilty of anything Marilyn Mosby's office is repeatedly trying to convict him of. So Marilyn Mosby is another one of those folks, another one of those performative representatives of Black faces who are the stand-ins for white supremacy, and she's happy to do it. She's been happy to do it. And the reason, by the way, this was published in December 14th, 2021. The reason Keith Davis Jr. will be tried again in May of this year is because he rejected a 15-year plea deal that Marilyn Mosby's office offered him. 15 years. This man is supposed to accept going to prison for 15 years for crimes he did not commit that Marilyn Mosby has prosecuted him repeatedly for, unsuccessfully every time, 4 times before, offers him a plea deal to save face for herself. He says, hell no, so she's going to try him again. So here we have coming up on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. where so many folks, so many Black folks, so many Black politicians, Black faces in high places are going to implore you and me to make Martin Luther King Jr.'s day a day on and not a day off. Tell the people who fought for this great radical man to have a federal holiday recognizing his contribution, which I don't even know why, because what difference does it make to have the system that murdered him recognize him? Makes no, but look, it's a day off, I'm gonna take it. And that's my attitude toward these whole, oh, it's a day on, not a day off, make it a day of service, make it a day of volunteer. I'm not volunteering to do shit. I ain't doing nothing. I'm not doing anything. Y'all ain't gonna volunteer to do nothing on July 4th. I'm gonna sit up here and eat my snacks and watch movies. I'm gonna enjoy my day off, because our people have worked for it. Our people deserve it. And the last thing we need is a bunch of Black faces in high places, which they are undoubtedly going to do, telling us that we need MLK Day to be a day of service. The one way, the only way I would accept MLK Day being a day of service among our folks is if we use that day to organize to bring this fucking system and all of those Black faces in high places down to the ground in the smoldering heap of ashes that it deserves to be presented in, that it deserves to exist in. That's the only work. That's the only work I am willing for us Black folk to do on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If we're going to work, let's work to organize to tear this system to the ground. Let us work to organize to call out these Black faces in high places who are pimping the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. in order to tell us that we need to work for this system to make this system feel good. Instead of us taking care of ourselves and enjoying a day off, we need to get out and clean up the community and pick up trash. No, nigga, I pay taxes. I'm going to call Department of Public Works and they going to come pick this trash up because that's what I pay my taxes for them to do. I'm not going to go paint any building. I'm not going to paint a flagpole. I'm not going to pick up anybody's trash. Nope. What I will do is organize. That's the only work we should be doing on MLK Day. And honestly, it's the work we should be doing every damn day, some kind of way. If you aren't enriching yourself with information, if you aren't learning the history, if you aren't connecting with established organizations that are, implementing organized political education sessions and are working in the community to, provide mutual aid, meet people's needs, and challenge this system, what are you doing? Because that is what Martin Luther King Jr. was telling us to do when he made that speech at Riverside Church. He wasn't just standing there calling out the racism and the militarism and the consumerism, the materialism of this society, the triple evils of this society, just to be talking. He wasn't just preaching a sermon. That was a call to action for us to fight against those things. So that's the work I'm willing to do on MLK Day. Otherwise, it's my day off, sucker. I ain't doing nothing else. So thanks a lot for hanging out with me tonight, you all, on Luke Mon Nation, in Luke Mon Nation. I appreciate you very, very much. If you and let me correct, let me correct. I appreciate your comment, Heather, but let me correct you really quick. And this is what we do in a comradely way. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. did not give his life. He was assassinated. They took his life because he refused to lay down against the triple evils of this society. You notice when MLK, at the beginning of his career, was talking about integration and, you know, all this kind of stuff, it was like, yeah, that Negro is a pain in the ass, but okay. But as soon as he started calling out the militarism of this country, the bombs this government dropped on people who looked like us around the world. At the time, it was Vietnam. The rampant materialism, the income inequality, the racialized income inequality, the racism and the racist violence. And when he did that from the Riverside Church, then he became a threat to this system. So King, even though, yes, I absolutely do believe, as a person of faith, I do believe that whatever divine, whatever it is you want to call it, did tell him that your life will not be long, that you will be sacrificed in the service of this work. Make no mistake that his life was taken. I'm going to say this and make some people mad, but that's okay. It's never stopped me saying anything else before. His life was taken, very much like Jesus Christ's life was taken. All this kind of stuff about, oh, Jesus gave his life. Jesus was executed by the state. Jesus was an anti-imperialist who challenged the status quo of the state, of the Roman Empire, and of the religious establishment, and he was executed by the state. Martin Luther King Jr. was executed. He was assassinated very much by the state. Am I saying that Martin Luther King Jr. was Jesus? No, I'm making the comparison about how freedom fighters don't give their lives. Their lives are taken because they stand up and fight for freedom, for liberation against the state. Yes, knowing full well that the cost for that fight sometimes is death, but nobody's just laying their lives down here. Their lives are taken by a state that does not want freedom fighters to succeed. And that's why we have to release our political prisoners, because they too are freedom fighters who are being executed by the state. Only the state is a slow execution. And by the way, Jesus was not blue. He was not blue-eyed. Jesus was Palestinian. He looked closer to me and some of y'all than he did that representation of this white person that Jesus Christ never would. Let's get this stuff straight. Let's get these things straight. You don't have to believe in Christianity to understand that the representation, the white supremacist representation of even faith, is absolutely a lie. Jesus won't white, his eyes won't blue, his hair won't blonde. The Bible even says that. So, all right, y'all. Thank y'all very much for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Subscribe to Black Power Media if you have not subscribed to Black Power Media. Click the little bell to make sure you get notifications for whenever anybody on this channel goes live. There's plenty of stuff to enjoy on this channel, a little bit for everyone. You can support Black Power Media through Patreon, patreon.com/Black Power Media. And you can also support Lukman Nation on Patreon, patreon.com/Lukman Nation. As always, look, y'all, be really good to each other, be good to yourselves, and as the eternal chairman Fred Hampton said, peace if you are willing to fight for it. Good night, y'all. Oh, wait, I have something else to share with you. A little treat, because this good boy is waiting for his pizza and movie night. Other than turning the TV channel, he's been a good boy and he's been waiting for his pizza and movie night. So, Brewski thanks you. I thank you. Good night, y'all. And they are out here throwing up the peace sign like they won something. Yep. I don't understand what they think they want.
I need to revise. I did see white people this happy. I gave the example of America and the Allies' defeat over Nazi Germany. But I haven't seen this many white people happy. There was a couple periods in history. One was when Nutella was introduced. And I mean, I haven't seen that many white people happy since Nutella was introduced and marketed and stuff. Because white people love Nutella.
They booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement. Right back where I started, nothing to show for a facelift. Got pushed playing Walter White and Davis, never felt so dangerous. The type of power they can't quantify. And name the best from my region, you gotta utter mine. Think of who really putting on, you never come to mind. Rapping like your Spotify, tap you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel the static, you're too close, find your balance. Embed the revolution for their prohibition bandwidth. Blood trickle from the leaders he was planning. Had them all line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top when I'm a mile up. I had them all line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top when I'm a mile up. Boy, that flight to Amsterdam. When my accountant and minus my family found out too and didn't like it. You're not in this alone. What Dale said and I thought he was biased. Then I got a Venmo that said copy the finest. Before my foolishness settled in. Recorded a whole tape before we got to Berlin. This close to giving up and now never again. Don't overlook the work and come expecting to win. In the end, my word, never put nothing over the squad. Got it right up under their nose and try the facade. Off the cliff with broken wings, I'm aware of the odds. Enough faith for us all, I'm the one for the job. Most days, catching sun rays, baby, look like the front page. Overthinking what they might say, have it your way. Yeah, the biggest threat is something they never seen. Dial it up, patch me into the screen. Had them all line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up. Had them all line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up.